Really looking forward to this one this evening with Russell Sterling. Obviously, he's out in America. He's had quite the journey going from Coleraine, and now he's out there full time. He's got a great lifestyle, and you've known him for a short while, Gary. It was an interesting way that the two of you met. Tell us about it.
I met him at McGee College, believe it or not, 2017 at the Ford Cup. I was at that time just about to take over the 07 age group at Hillsborough Boys, and I was moving around just watching a few different games. And I happened to be sitting on the grass verge just beside the road at McGee campus, and to my left-hand side there was a whole lot of young American kids messing about, watching a few games. And no matter how loud the American kids were, there was one accent that I heard out of over all of them, and it was a Korean accent that happened to be Russell's accent. But like anything, you hear a Korean accent from a mile away, you know exactly where they're from. So I just made sort of a little chit chat with him, and he sat down and we had a chat just about the game and about how he was doing and how his team were doing. But what was actually quite nice about it was during the week, the young 07s started to mingle with the Tampa Bay boys because they were staying in the same complex as us at McGee that time. And the Tampa Bay players actually had promised the 07s that they would come and watch their last game on Friday if it didn't clash with theirs. So the boys took to the field down. If you've been to McGee College, the grass embankment is just slightly higher than the pitch, just where the road is. So that's where I was sat against the lamppost just, and at the very front of that, so down the hill, the Tampa Bay boys had lined up and they were chanting. I don't exactly know what they were chanting. They were chanting something about Hillsborough Boys, and the boys were playing just on the other side of the fence. So that really motivated them and pushed them on. So it was a nice connection for them to have, and something that grew organically during that week. And then after the boys had finished playing at McGee, they went across to the other side of Derry and watched Tampa in their final game. And there was a celebration at the end. It's actually some video footage floating about somewhere, and some nice photos with it. And off the back of that, then the Hillsborough Boys got in contact with some of the directors at Tampa Bay and just sent them a letter thanking them for their kindness and the way that the boys were towards the 07s and the memories that had created. So that's kind of where the connection happened. And I suppose over that time we've just been back and forth little bits on Facebook Messenger and just commenting. And then when we're just thinking about the series of interviewing coaches and getting some worth from coaches who are not necessarily working here in Northern Ireland, they are from Northern Ireland, but they're working elsewhere, he was one that popped into my mind. Like I said, because of that interaction on that embankment at McGee. Russell, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come on and have a chat. Obviously, we're in the middle of lockdown right now. Are you up to anything exciting?
Just been like a lot of coaches trying to use this time effectively to brush up on my own growth as a coach. There's a lot of good courses out there that have been reduced, thankfully, by the company. So this is a good time to kind of use that to get some more knowledge on board, and watching a lot of webinars and things. Not that everyone has a lot of teaching in the webinars, but it's just good to connect with football and get your brain thinking about football.
It's nice to have that contact when you can't be on the pitch.
No, nothing to watch, so it's a good way of keeping you in the game, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of the game, have you been watching any of the reruns recently that have been all over the internet and all over terrestrial TV?
Trying my best to. It's tough to get TV time with two little kids, so trying my best. But I've enjoyed a lot of the older matches from when I was a kid. The stuff from the early 80s and the likes has been interesting to watch, and I've been watching a lot of soccer documentaries on Netflix that I've found very interesting. A rerun of the 92 Euros, the Denmark story, was one I really liked. Right. And Bobby Robson, another great one.
And you're giving your age away there a little bit, Russell.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, then, when we think back about how we first get into football and particularly coaching as well, can you sort of regress back to that point in your life where you kind of realised you had a passion for the game?
It's funny, in my very, very younger years, I was a bit of a petrol head, for want of a better word. I was obsessed with the motorbikes in the Northwest and all of that, and I had friends who had riders stay over at their house, so I was always about all the circuits and was obsessed with that. Never really took a huge interest in football until I was, other than just playing in the park and the streets and stuff around my neighbourhood. And then when I was about 9 or 10, I joined the boys brigade and started playing for them, and it just snowballed from then. From then on, there was nothing that could compete with football. That was just the only thing that dominated my thinking. And it snowballed very fast from there, really from 10 years of age onwards.
So that was kind of the spark then that kind of ignited that love for the game.
For sure. And then, playing for youth teams around the area, East End, many moons ago. And for a few short years, we formed a team out in Ballyrashane. It was only a 2-year wonder, and got a lot of, I think might have been around the time when East End had folded initially. And a lot of players came out to that, and that quickly snowballed into tech and university, and the rest happened very quickly getting out here.
So if you were kind of to look back on that, can you pick out a fondest memory that you've had, or a memory that stands out?
To be honest, as I get older, my memory is very poor. So, I have a lot of little memories from playing in my youth and goals that I scored and whatever. But when I compare it now to the fantastic level of coaching and attention and the amount of times that players can get to train, I was robbed completely. We only trained once or twice a week at tops. I remember having Billy Piper, who had played for Carrick Rangers at the time, I don't know if you remember that name, came and done our training, and it was very fitness based. There was a lot of planking, there was a lot of running, and there was very little time with the ball other than playing at the end. So when I think back, I had a lot of fun and a lot of enjoyment from playing, and I loved the game. But in terms of the product that we as coaches now try to put out, not just here but across the world, it's come on unbelievable amounts since then.
And was that kind of experience, I suppose, what you'd done when you were younger, and looking back now realising it probably wasn't the right thing to do? Was that kind of experience like a catalyst for you to get into coaching, or how did that come about?
My catalyst for getting into coaching, to be honest, was I always, like every young boy, had a dream to be a footballer. And once it was clear that wasn't going to be at a top level, I just still wanted to be involved in the game in some capacity. Despite the best advice of my careers teachers at school, I knew that I wanted to do something in sport, wanted to do something in football, and that led me to, I ended up going to Causeway Institute to do a BTEC National Diploma in Sports Science. And that's really when my introduction to coaching, if you like, started, when there was a lot of different coaching awards for various sports, rugby, cricket, football. And I also did a bit of voluntary stuff with the Korean Technique Centre, as it was called at the very start. Trevor McKendry was involved in it. That's a long time ago. Kenny Woodrow. And I remember going in and kind of watching those guys doing what they were doing and learning off them. And it was a very slow process, but being involved with those ultimately led me to want to go and do my degree. I went to Northumbria in Newcastle and did a degree in sports science, and that's when it really started to, even though I was playing for the university and that was, training and playing twice a week, I still tailored my entire degree towards the coaching side of the sports science, sports studies degree. And ended up doing a work placement with Sunderland on the back of that, and worked in different schools in the Northumberland area.
So even within that story, there's so many different avenues and different pathways that you took, and the experiences you've talked about in there. I suppose for any coach watching or any aspiring coach, what would you kind of say about getting out of your comfort zone and going and trying something that maybe isn't exactly what you want to do at that moment, but it's going to lead you on to something else?
I think in terms of opportunity, like even from when I started the journey, which is now 20 years ago that I came to America, never mind starting, so we're talking 26, 27 years ago, the opportunities now worldwide are phenomenal. But with that comes the competition level for employment is through the roof. I'm sat here with a UFA and a US soccer A license with no work currently. So it gives you an idea, and 20 plus years experience of coaching, not just twice a week, but for the last 15, 18 years in America, I've been doing this double sessions 4 nights a week for the entirety. So it's very, very competitive, but you have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone, and you have to be willing to, try new things and meet as many people as you can, because doors always open, regardless of who you meet. They've always got something that they can help you with in your career.
Yeah, you mentioned briefly there about networking, but we're going to come back to that question. I just want to pick up on one of the things you said in terms about the learning process that happened. If you could think back from when you started coaching to where you're at now, can you pick out maybe one moment or a number of moments that have really formed you as a coach?
I think a lot of my, certainly my man management and how I deal with players and that side of the coaching aspect, a lot of that has been born out of poor experiences I had as a player, or experiences I had of working with other coaches who weren't very good at that side of the game. In terms of actual learning how to hone my skill and present it, that's just been an ongoing process. And there has been, I guess there's probably people along the way who I've taken little pieces out of that I've learned to really adapt, or not adapt, but they're pieces that I've wanted to use that suit my style of delivery, if that makes sense. One in particular, we fast forward from the start of my American journey to about halfway through, I ended up working for Everton America, who were an affiliate of Everton in the UK. And part of that initial partnership, their coaches come out to us and worked with us to allow us to mirror the curriculum they were delivering back at Finch Farm. And Tosh was one of the main guys at that point, who obviously anybody in coaching circles will know how well renowned he is and what he's done. And he was famous for working with Rooney in his younger years. His delivery and his attention to detail and the way he broke everything down was one of the first guys that really hit home with me about how important the detail is. And I was guilty of it myself. It was so easy to go and get exercises off the internet and try and implement them and get frustrated when players weren't, delivering them to the standard that you need to. And it goes back to a lot of the stuff that you guys have been covering recently is, why do you do this session? What's the purpose of the session? And really work backwards to what your end goal is going to be. And then when you're in the session, deliver it piece by piece and tailor your delivery for the people you're working with. So those were some of the big things I learned from working with him. And as he stepped back from Everton, they started sending out Paul Harris, who was kind of like a clone of Tosh because he had worked with Tosh. So those two really over a long period of time, over about 5-6 years, and delivering the Everton curriculum was very molded a lot of how I coach. And then just along the way, a lot of the people I've met and a lot of the courses I've done have kind of reinforced a lot of those beliefs. So,
yeah, I had the opportunity to sort of work with Tosh for a weekend back in 2018. He was over delivering a Coach Ed event up in Lisburn with a few other coaches, and as you said, phenomenal insight, phenomenal passion for the game.
Personality it brings to the session as well. It's a huge thing. And
yep. I remember watching him, and obviously Wes Gregg from Coleraine and obviously Port Stewart, I think, originally, but I just looked at Tosh that time, and all I could see was the passion that he had, which just mirrored everything that I had seen in Wes. And I think that's why I was drawn to him, because Wes was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, influence in my coaching career, and I just seen almost like a reincarnation of him. It was up at Lisburn Distilleries ground. We done the Coach Ed event. And as you said, the personality and the passion that he had, and the way that he connected with the kids, I think that was I'd never seen that before. How much of a connection he had, and he'd only met the kids maybe 15 minutes before the session, but by the end of it, they were his best friend.
Yeah.
Which obviously shows the level of ability he had to build relationships in such a quick period of time. If you think about everything that you'd seen then and what you've just spoken about in terms of the mentors you've had in the game, if you could look back even further than that, if you can go right back to the start of your coaching career, was there any moments in time where there was a situation that you tried something that didn't work and you've learned from it, or you have just been able to spontaneously make something happen in the moment and you went, actually, I'm going to keep that, and you move on from that?
Pretty much on a daily basis. And I think if you don't say that, you're lying through your teeth. I think every time, and even now, I'll go out and I'll deliver sessions and I'll come back, and what I've got better at doing over the years as a result of doing courses and educating myself more is that I know I need to be critical of myself and evaluate my sessions. I could, out here particularly, even though the standard of coaching is going up massively, I could roll out every day and put on sessions and people would be delighted with what you put on without evaluating, without trying to better yourself. And that's why I really like going on courses, and it's only within the last probably 5 years, 7 years now, that I have done my UFAB, UFA, USB, USA, and that's really got me thinking more about how I deliver as a coach. And that's a long way into the journey that I'm now, I wouldn't say I've reinvented myself, but I've just become much, much better with experience at improving the product that I put on the field.
Yeah, there's a few things that came through there as you were speaking, in terms of the self-motivation, the drive to improve. You just don't want to do the same session every day of the week, because one, it's going to bore you eventually. You're going to get bored delivering it. You'll lose that passion. But as you say too, there has to be a bit of authenticity in there too, that, you have a drive and a passion to go do this. So you want to put everything you have into it. And it's interesting that you say, that the journey you've been on in terms of Coach Ed. I mean, that's quite a lot of courses in such a short period of time. You've jumped from B license to A license, and obviously the US version of that as well. If you think about that journey in particular, is there any highlights or moments that stand out from that?
I would have done it over a longer period of time if I had the choice again, to be honest, because it's been a hell of a lot of work to try and work in with coaching as well at the same time. But you could look at it two ways. I could argue that I maybe wouldn't have taken as much out of it earlier in my career because I wouldn't have been as critical a thinker. Some people are. A lot of new coaching breeds coming up are fantastic thinkers. I talked to you about this the other day. A lot of new coaching know that self-evaluation and everything is such a huge part of it. It wasn't when I was in my younger, it wasn't deemed as necessary when I was at the start of my journey. And I was also so busy with summer camps and, everything that you get bogged down with in terms of the entire year, and also the difficulty with visas going back and forth made it very difficult at times to be in the UK when I needed to be in the US and vice versa. So I kind of was in the wrong place at the wrong time in terms of visas to do the courses. So that's more the reason why it took so long to do it. However, having done them, now all the content's much fresher in my head. And I think the courses have probably improved a hell of a lot over the years as well. So I maybe got more benefit out of doing them, in a short space of time. Now it's just about implementing the ideas back into the field as best I can.
Yeah, you make a good point as well in terms of the length of time it took you to get to where you're at as such in terms of the qualifications, because there can be quite a bit of focus on coaches jumping from the next or looking towards the next coaching license before they've even had a chance to implement their learnings from the previous coaching session. Yeah. When you get on your C license, you hear guys about, I'm going to go my B license next year, then I'm going to go to my A license, and then eventually I'm going to do my pro. And I think that's good to have that trajectory and that outlook. But somewhere along the line, you have to be able to implement your learnings from the course or the license you've just done before you start moving on.
100%.
And I just want to throw that back on you, because it's a different situation when you're out in America compared to as over here, obviously, in terms of the Coach Ed, how it's structured and some of the content. But how do you feel is there much relevance, I suppose, is the real question. Is there much relevance in the stuff that you've done, your coaching licenses here, that you could then go and deliver when you're out in the States with your teams? Does the content transfer easily enough?
I mean, we're coaching football at the end of the day, so yes, for a simple answer. Mm-hmm. I think to be able to coach the game anywhere, you need a good knowledge, and you can say that different countries have a different style of play and one thing or another, but ultimately it comes down to your football knowledge and how much you're going to take on board from these courses. Now, both licenses had a lot of great learning tools and a lot of new information. I would say the UEFA one was much heavier on the field aspect, certainly in the first year, and a lot more importance put on the product you're actually putting on the field. Whereas there's a huge emphasis on creating the correct environment and the overall coach. I guess it maybe you could argue the A license and the process in the US sets you up better to be a huge tool to your soccer club in terms of not just a coach, but in terms of the structure of the club. Looking after other coaches, educating other coaches. So the whole process with the two combined covers a hell of a lot of different aspects that yes, were very important and will be very important ongoing.
And I think that's another important point you've made there in terms of when you get to that, you got to that A license level, but obviously then when you got there, you still done your US courses. So you were able to mix the learnings from what you've done previously to what you'd done in the US courses. So that kind of brings us on really to the US discussion. How did you come into work in the US all come about?
Back when I was at university, I had heard of people who had been out and worked in America for a summer job and of all the great stories and the fun that they had and everything. So I was coming to the end of my degree and graduation time, and rather than get myself into the real world of work, for want of a better phrase, I wanted to try something different. So I was brave enough to go. I seen that they were interviewing, and it was one of the universities in Leeds. They were having an open day. It was Major League Soccer Camps was the company, although it was a British company. They were affiliated with the early years of the MLS League at that point, so all of their merchandise and everything was tied in with the MLS clubs. So I went to the open day, coached a few sessions, got selected to go. In them days, BUNAC, British universities, took care of the visas, and it was literally, I remember signing my name on the bottom of a form and got a visa. That was how simple it was. Then I went out and worked for one summer. That was summer of '99. Came back, traveled around Europe for a bit, not necessarily coaching wise, but just because you could. And when I eventually got back out again during my second spell out in the States was when 9/11 took place. And that changed the parameters for British coaches going in and out massively in terms of visa requirements. So to be there full time was very difficult. And to be there full time with the company I was then working for meant you pretty much becoming a salesman more than a soccer coach. So it kind of changed my outlook as to where I was going. So I could bore you with an hour-long story of visa complications and about $30,000, $40,000 later of lawyer fees. I eventually got back out again, and after being out with Everton America for I probably had about 6 or 7 years there and got settled in Connecticut, I then had more visa difficulties, and then further down the line I ended up getting married, and that solved all visa issues as well as giving me a fantastic wife and kids, obviously. But one thing for coaches to be acutely aware of is, yes, there's opportunities, but to break down the immigration laws in whatever country it is not the easiest process and can be a very expensive process as well. So there's been a large chunk of it was in Connecticut with Everton America. And then after getting married, I moved down to Tampa and I've been here for 5 years now. And that's been more challenging because you went from establishing yourself over a long period of time with a good club. I was director over about 5 or 6 different coaches in a U15 to U18 age group, and then went to taking 2 third level teams, with just teams with no control, built my way back up again, and then we're at a different club again. So it's been a long journey, and it's going to continue to do that. But there's been a lot of cool opportunities in between that the visas kind of allowed. So
there's been a lot of
some of those have been some of the best moments of my coaching, actually. So
there's been a lot of perseverance in that as well. That story you just told, where you've had knockbacks and setbacks, but you just you kept going, you kept persevering, and eventually you've got to where you wanted to be.
Yes and no. I mean, the ambition's still there to do more and to see more. I've ultimately got to live in America and have the Florida sunshine every day, which ultimately at the beginning was my goal. And I'm able to coach football every day of the week and get paid quite well for it. So that, from that point of view, yes. In terms of where I want it to take me, we're not quite there yet, but it's an ongoing process. So, I mean, I ultimately would like to work my way into the senior game at some level, be it as an assistant, be it in analysis, what it may be. So I've had a few kind of glimpses of that. In between my visas, when I was back home, I actually was taking Ballymoney under 12s at the Foyle Cup, and then I took their under 17s and ended up a few months later getting the first team job when they were in the Irish League. What's it called now? NIFL 2, Championship 2 now. The season they actually got relegated, but I didn't relegate them, I'd like to add. So I had a spell from about October to the beginning of January, at which time I got my visas through to come back and get married. So that was really exciting to go and coach at that level, and could have been a great stepping stone for me. And circumstance meant it wasn't going to be that time, but I was coming up to January when there was a transfer window when I was going to try and get James McLaughlin from Ballyboogie, and who knows where that would have led for him and me. But things like that where you look back, yes, it was an opportunity. It wasn't the top level, but it might have changed my path massively in terms of coaching. I may have stayed home, and who knows where I would be now. And then recently after I finished with my club that I've been coaching down here with, Tampa Bay United, I have took a year of doing voluntary opposition analysis for the professional team in Tampa Bay Rowdies, who play in the USL League. And their coach is Neil Collins, who played in the English Premier League, played for Wolves, Sheffield United, etc. So I've had a good opportunity to learn from him and pick his brains and get some great feedback on the work I've been doing from him. Martin Patterson was part of the coaching staff last year, Martin Patterson that played for Northern Ireland. So I've been able to, speak and learn from some great guys as a result of having the bravery to go voluntary with no pay for a year. It's now come to the point where I need some money, so that is not going to continue. But, things like that have really whetted my appetite for the opportunities that might be out there. And, the ambition to go and get after them. Now, they're not going to happen straight away, so I probably need to get back in at a level that I can right now and see where that takes me.
Yeah, but sorry, James, off you go.
No, I was just going to say to Russell, a country that size, how do you go about, I suppose, effectively selling yourself in order to stand out?
It's a great question. The job websites are great, and there's lots of listings and an awful lot of the time. But as you say, you're facing competition now on, LinkedIn's full of ex-pros, and everybody's aware of the jobs that are out here. The convention in Baltimore, not Baltimore every year, but the convention that was in Baltimore is a shop window of just everybody that's anybody in football is there. so there's different avenues of going to sell yourself. But as you say, it's very, very difficult. And one thing I've learned in the game, and it doesn't matter where you are, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And yes, you need to have the experience and you need to have the know-how, but you need to be very fortunate with your opportunities and meeting the right people at the right time. And, as time goes on, I'm trying to network more and more, because every person you meet knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And that's the best tool you can have in this game, especially for someone who hasn't played professional, because you've got that barrier against you. And even with experience, it's difficult to champion yourself against these other guys. But working with the Rowdies, for example, was a good reference I now have from a very well-respected manager, a fledgling manager, but a very well-respected player who's had a great career. So that's really important in terms of giving you opportunities. But the vastness of the country presents its own problems as well, because to relocate anywhere is a huge undertaking. It's not like moving, it's not like you can commute to every job. And even Florida in itself, there's jobs in Miami, but Miami's 6 hours away drive. So it's a huge, huge place to be able to have opportunities. And then where you are, the little goldfish bowl of everybody knows everybody. And so it's very difficult to get positions. It's kind of about networking and waiting till the right opportunity comes up. And there might have to be a leap of faith at some point and test out an opportunity that comes along. It might mean relocation, it might not. So,
and how did you end up deciding to? Sorry.
I think that would be true at home as well. Even it's if we're in Northern Ireland and you want to take an opportunity in England, Scotland, it's a huge leap of faith as well. So.
And how do you come to taking that leap of faith where you say, right, I'm going to go voluntary with this club? What's the thought processes behind that? Because there will be a lot of people listening who are in a similar position.
I think you've just got to make yourself as marketable as possible. There's nobody who's going to come and knock on your door. Nobody. People know I have an A license, but they don't know me. They don't know what I'm like to work with, how I can work. So you've got to put yourself out there and let people see what talent you have. And even if it's for a small amount of time, I think you can make an impression. And that's one of the good things about going on coaching courses as well. You meet so many people and you can really get to know people over that period of time that you're on the course with them. And that opens up a lot of doors, and has done as well. The courses I've been on, I've got to know a huge amount of people all over the country. So, there is places and pockets where I know people where they could move to. It's just about it being the right opportunity to make it worthwhile going lock, stock and barrel,
So what do you think then for yourself is helping you right now to stand out in terms of, putting everything together, you as a package?
Well, as I don't have a job, nothing really. So, maybe I'm not doing it right, but all I can do right now, and what I've kind of come to accept, because it's such a difficult time and clubs are kind of up in the air with what their plans are going to be, things might take some time to develop. So it's up to me in the meantime to make myself the best I can be by educating myself and getting more qualifications and networking with more people, talking to more people. I'm trying to take in as many webinars as I can. I'm trying to communicate with as many people as I can, reaching out to different academies across the country to kind of see what they're doing. So it's just about giving yourself the best platform to be ready when that opportunity does come around. Yeah,
it's funny you should say that in terms of the networking, and you mentioned there about going the voluntary stuff that you've done with Tampa Bay Rowdies. We spoke to Conor Marlin a few weeks back, and he had talked about the sacrifice he made where he had to travel for long distance to work at Club NI and things like that, so that he maybe wasn't getting paid for it, and it was actually out of his own pocket that he's paying his own fuel and stuff. But he knew where that the next step would lead him. He knew where that would lead for him in terms of getting that foot through the door. And likewise, I spoke to Andy Clausen, who we're going to speak to next week, who's out in Bangkok at the minute, and he talks about the time he was at Hearts, where he was off and he came into the clubhouse. He knew the director would be there, so he went literally just started pumping up footballs and sorting equipment out just to make a good impression, because he knew that by doing that he would recognise who he was, get a chat with him, and then that network of connections that he would have would grow bigger at the club. And it's a really important point, particularly when, like you say, it's a situation you find yourself in now. You might not have seen the fruits of those labours earlier on in your career, but in situations where you need them, you maybe are going to start seeing the benefits of that.
For sure.
Yeah, so I just wanted to sort of pick that just a little bit more, just pick that a little apart a bit more, because the idea of networking is obviously out there in the media. You get LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But for you, I suppose, looking at it from outside in, I suppose, from America looking into Northern Ireland, and then obviously being from Northern Ireland too, what would you say has been, since you've been in America, what has been the biggest development in the game, or at least in coaching circles, that you feel since the time you've been in America?
In America, or in
in America? In America, yeah.
When I first came over, there was very few British coaches about, and those who were much more knowledgeable about the game. So coaches here have made a huge effort in educating themselves and bridging the gap, if you like. And it's a pay-to-play model, so clubs have a huge financial advantage over any clubs in Northern Ireland in terms of budget they have to put coaches through education, and in terms of facilities and everything else. So the growth of the game has been, it kind of goes hand in hand with the huge business that it is. These clubs are, some of the bigger clubs are talking between 6,000 kids every year, and then maybe rec programs on top of that, and you're talking into millions that these clubs are turning out over in a year. You have clubs with directors of directors directing, like in a pyramid system. Like, some of the roles are ridiculous, and they're all on six-figure sums. So when you put that kind of money into a product, and you have the determination of kind of the American mentality of we're the best at everything we do, it's obvious that it's going to keep progressing and keep progressing. Now, there's a lot of things they do wrong, and there's a lot of things that curtail them being even better than what they could be. And as a catch-22, one of those is the pay-to-play model, because it eliminates a lot of talent. But they're certainly doing a hell of a lot of things right, and the growth of the game in the time that I've been here is absolutely phenomenal, and the standard's very, very good. At the better clubs, the standard's very, very good. Participation-wise, the numbers are crazy and are probably up there, if not higher, than most of the other American sports. But at the elite end, the product and the ability of players is very good now, as is the standard of coaching, as is the structure of the clubs, and the facilities, and everything is as professional as it could be. You wonder why it hasn't got better and better. It's because there's still, in my opinion, a lot of the older guard still in positions that are very, but all, like everything, when the younger wave of coach comes through and they become the guys that are in charge, and guys who are playing now are finishing, and if they're not playing at college, they're now starting to think about coaching badges. So you're just going to have a continuous cycle of very knowledgeable people coming through, and the game's going to blossom. But it is all over the place. I mean, the developments in Northern Ireland's huge from when I left as well. Every time I go back, I talk to coaches and I see better coaches, and I meet guys at the courses, and the standard of play is very good. We bring teams over to the Foyle Cup most years, and competitive wise, the boys are at home are easily a match for most of the teams you bring over. So it's an interesting one, but huge changes, yes, since when I first come over.
Yeah, it's I'm going to pick up on the Foyle Cup, because that's obviously where we first met. I was looking after the 07s at Hillsborough at the time. I hadn't actually taken over. I was just about to take over. And I was standing in McGee College and the whole lot of American kids to my left. And I heard this Korean accent just sort of shine through from the American accents. And obviously it was yourself. But you get a chance to come over, or you did get a chance to come over to the Foyle Cup at that time. And as you said, you'd seen the difference in the level since you'd left to where they're at when you were there at the time. Is there, I suppose, from the time that you've left, so how long, it was, what, 20 years you said you've been out now?
I've pretty much not been permanent in Northern Ireland since about 96,
Yeah, so
times,
obviously since then we've went through the transition of small-sided games, so obviously all kids at the younger age used to play 11v11, and now it's broken down to IFA have their regional centres throughout Northern Ireland now that are 7v7, 9v9 developing up into eventually 11v11. At your time when you sort of first left the country, would there have been any changes, I suppose is an easier question to ask, would there have been any changes that you would have made then, not taking into consideration the knowledge you have now, but you back then, 96, before you left? If you think about the game in a form that it was back then.
I definitely did, because I considered very strongly staying at home and building my career there. One of the ultimate reasons is there was just no money in the game for it to be a full-time position, and having to work, other jobs alongside it, which is just not what I had kind of wanted to do. And believe you me, I tried it at many a great venue back in Northern Ireland, AVX and Bushmills Distillery, and I served my time on those. So I think one of the big things that pleases me now, not necessarily on the field, but is the organisation and structure of clubs, in that they see the importance of, having a proper board of directors or a chair, and, people making the right decisions for the club. And they have I'm not sure what fees are or whatever, but there's certainly better management of money and utilisation of money from what I can see from the outside in at a lot of clubs. And it's all aimed at making a better product and a better environment for the boys. So that's a huge obvious that I can see when I go back. And from talking to coaches and what they're doing at their clubs, and, the contact time they have with the players, etc. There's a lot of those things have been implemented. I guess the stumbling block still is because there's not money in the game. So far as for coaches, you're still going to have a lot of young coaches going abroad to Eurasia, to America, to England, whatever. So you're still going to have a lot of very good volunteers and great people, but not necessarily the standard of coaching that maybe you'd want across the board. So saying that, they pay everybody handsomely over here, and there's still some absolute horror stories of coaches. But talking specifically for home, I think at the top level and the top teams, and certainly Irish League academies are getting better at it now. The standard of coaching's much, much better, and they're finding a way to get these better coaches in. So that's been obvious as I kind of follow what's going on at home.
And I just want to, at one point in closing, before I ask James or Nathan to jump in with a few questions, is if you could have thought back to when you first started coaching, and if you had an end goal in sight, I suppose, at that time in terms of where you wanted to go to, how far do you think you are close to sort of reaching that level? Or what is your end goal in the game? Where do you see yourself, what level do you see yourself getting to?
Oh, what a question. I mean, my ambition still stays high in terms of getting involved in the senior game in some capacity. The other couple of good options living out in the States is getting involved in the college side of things, which does have a good professional slant to it, where you're traveling to games, you've got a budget to work with, you've got players in training every day. And then the third kind of option is going down the club director route, where you're in charge of coaches and developing a club. All three of those are still attainable. What direction I kind of go in is difficult. I guess I'm doing a lot of education to kind of keep the doors open for all of them, if that makes sense. from where I initially wanted to go or where I'd ideally like to be, I'd be honest, I'd like to work with a club in the UK. But I'm not living in the UK and I've got a family, so that's, you know, what I want to do and what I do is two completely different things. And I had a brief spell in between visas where I worked with Glasgow Rangers, just doing, I was doing a lot of their camps throughout. They had camps in Northern Ireland, which I did first, and then I did a lot of camps in Scotland. When we talk about sacrifice, I flew back and forward on my own dime and stayed with friends or whatever in between those type of things. And looking back, had I bit the bullet and moved to Glasgow, who knows where it would have led to, because some guys at that kind of same level are now involved with their academy doing very well. So it's all about opportunities and taking them and knowing if they're the right fit, and you're never going to make the right decision all the time, so you just got to enjoy it. But like, if I look back on the experiences I've had and the grounds I've been to and the people I've met, and it way exceeds what I could have imagined when I started out at Korean Tech, like way exceeds. So I've already achieved what I set out to achieve, if you like, but as it goes, the ambition keeps growing, and there'll be some point, like in the professional football journey, there's a point where you realize that you're never going to make it. And that might come in a coaching capacity as well, but I'll enjoy the ride until it comes, you know.
And then on the back of that, what could we over here learn from yourself and the experiences in America? You know, what are the things that we could implement here?
I don't want to be, I'd never be condescending and think that America's ahead of Northern Ireland, because I don't think it is in a lot of areas. I think where they've got a huge advantage is from a monetary point of view, and that opens a lot of doors. I think they're actually getting a lot of stuff right at home and doing a lot of great work. I do think the product's maybe not valued as well as it is, as good a product as it is. And I think if clubs were brave enough to market their coaches better and market the talents they had, they could get away with charging some more money and making it a product that could make it into a full-time position, or government support. But we know how difficult that is to get funding to make it a realistic full-time position, you know. So there's no real hard or fast thing, to be honest, James, that I would say that they need to take away from America. The level of professionalism is very good, but the level of professionalism is allowed because of the money that's involved in the game. That's as simple as that. Because they wouldn't have the coaches, they wouldn't have the facilities, they wouldn't have everything without that. But they also get a hell of a lot of money from sponsorship and from there's other ways to make money that maybe, I don't know if this is the case now, but maybe might have been a stumbling block, is too many people say, well, we didn't do this, so we can't do this. But I think there is ways and means of generating finances. And that would be, from living in America, that would be the biggest thing I'd take away, is that there's always ways of making money if you're determined enough to do it. So.
Brilliant. Any more questions, James or Nathan? No?
It's just been a pleasure listening. Actually, it's really inspiring, and I'm sure others listening will be thinking, right, I'm going to make that journey. You know, you've clearly pointed out that it's not a straightforward journey. There's bumps along the road, but I suppose the perks of it, you know, like you say, you're sitting in Florida right now, and I'm wishing I was there. So.
So yeah, there's a lot of perks can come with it, and I mean, I think whether you're working here, whether you're working at home, I think my biggest summary is that the game's been very kind to me, and it will be to people that work in it. There's no better platform for meeting people, for enjoyment, and I think this last 6 months when we've been without it, highlights that to everybody more than anything. And if you're not missing it like crazy now, then maybe it's not the gig for you. Maybe this has been the best realization ever. But it's just made me even hungrier than I even was beforehand. And, I was in between jobs before this period started. I'm still in between jobs, but I'm even more determined now to get back on the field and get going.
Brilliant. So I think we'll sum that up there. We'll finish it up there, I should say. Russell, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out to come on and have a chat with us. As James says, there'll be a lot of coaches that will definitely take worth from that. And just on a sort of end note on that, if there's anything that coaches out there that are listening to this want to get in touch with us to try and get in touch with you to maybe explore that any further, can they do that through email or something?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll shoot you all my details, and more than happy to speak with anyone. What I won't promise you is a visa and a job, but I will give you all the insight that you need on your journey for sure. And I have some good contacts that can certainly help with that kind of stuff. But no, more than happy to help anybody, because I had a lot of help during my journey as well, and that's what it's all about.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So Nathan, fascinating conversation there with Russell, and really good insight. From your perspective, as you were listening in, what have you taken from that?
So as Russell mentioned, it's a case. It's not so much a case that it's going to just be plain sailing. So for me as an individual, sometimes I get this idea in my head that it's just going to be, once you get these qualifications, once you complete this course, once you complete that course, that's it. Everyone wants you. But as he said there, he's got his UFA license and other licenses that he's earned out in America, and it's the competition out there is quite extreme. But throughout that, I suppose he brought on the perseverance. So he was just constantly going at it. He was constantly learning more. He's doing webinars, things like that. And I think for me, looking at that, it's a case of me taking away now and going, what can I do? What can I incorporate into my learning that'll separate me from the other coaches that is also going out there? To decrease the amount of competition out there.
Yeah, because it'd be he's talking there about Florida and a fantastic lifestyle. I know from speaking to yourself, it's something that you want to explore. It's something you want to experience. So it's giving yourself that opportunity, most definitely. Yep. And then for you, Gary, obviously you've known Russell longer and his journey, but then listening to him, what did you pick up from it?
For me, it was more the self-motivation and the drive for continual improvement, where he mentioned that you could very easily out there go with an A license and with a reputation and get up every morning and go deliver the same sessions to the same group. But that doesn't motivate him. That's not what he's there for. He always wants to continually improve and be better, and the experiences for his players to improve with each contact as well. The other flip side of that is in terms of the coach education that he's done. So his B license, A license, and he's obviously done the US equivalent of both of those. And I like what he said in terms of taking bits from both, where maybe the UFA license was more of the practical on-field stuff, but just as important to that is the off-field stuff, where the man management side, the psychological side of the game comes in. He talked about the US model sort of being about creating environments for coaches and for players to flourish. So it shows that there was a transfer of skill there, and he was trying to build up his knowledge gaps rather than just doing it because he thought he had to. He'd done it with an idea in mind that I'm going to get X, Y, and Z out of it.
And then on the back of that, he's meeting all these people and he's actually networking, and I'm learning more about the importance of it, not in a selfish way, how you can help others and then how others can help you. And as he showed, that desire to improve in the game, and he still has that continual desire. You have to get out there. You have to connect with people.
I think it's right. You could even see from the example that he gave about doing the opposition analysis for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, voluntary for a year. I mean, unpaid for a year for someone who's got a family and a house. It's it's a big jump, a big commitment. But as he said himself, it was about keeping his foot in the door, but also gaining experience that he might not have ever gained if he had shunned that opportunity and said, I'm not going to do that. Then what learning is he missing out on? And as you say, what networking opportunities could eventually come from it? And obviously, with the situation that we have with COVID, he's not in employment at the minute. But who's to say that the opportunities he may have created for himself via the networking that he's done previously? I think it has so much more importance. So much importance, I should say, particularly because he talks about the model of ex-professionals dropping down from the game into the coaching level, and sometimes it's about who you know and not what you know. So you may be a good on-field coach and you may have the knowledge, but sometimes you're battling against that reputation of somebody else who's dropped out of the professional game. So there again, networking becomes also more important.